Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sleepy Lizard live stream. My name is Tom Siddons. I'm the owner of Sleepy Lizard Avocado Farm, and I'm also the guy who produces the videos on the Sleepy Lizard Avocado Farm YouTube channel. And today we're going to be talking about homesteading, starting your own farm, self-sufficiency, going off the grid. And today's stream is targeted to people who are thinking about doing something like that. You hear a lot of talk these days about off-grid living, about self-sufficiency, about people homesteading. People want to be able to produce their own food. They want to be a little bit more self-sufficient. And I have found that in life, one of the best ways to accomplish a goal is to find someone who's already done it and listen to what they have to say. And I've already done this. I've been doing this for 10 years. I walked away from a vice president job at one of the world's largest corporation. I walked away from millions of dollars in salary and commissions to pursue my dream of living a simpler, more outdoorsy oriented life. And then 2020 came along a few years into it, and the pandemic hit, and I realized the value in being more self-sufficient. And I started building the farm and started making some changes so that I and my family could be more self-sufficient. And but over the decade, we've had a lot of things that went well and a lot of things that went not so well. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let me just kind of settle in here, get everything set up right from a technical perspective. Let me put my glasses on here and see who's on and what's going on here. Sometimes people will give you a little heads up that they can't hear you. All right, how you doing, Dara? I see Dara's here. Greater good. How you guys doing? Here is the format for today. Like I said, today's stream is targeted toward people who have a desire to live a more self-sufficient lifestyle, to maybe go off and do some homesteading, maybe go off and start their own farm or something like that. And I've got a series of topics that I'd like to cover, and we're going to take about an hour to do it. I'd like to cover a topic, talk about it, and then entertain your questions. And while we're taking that little question break, I'm also going to have my dinner and eat some fruit that we grew here on the farm. I have some star fruit. I have two varieties of sapodilla, and I have this awesome Monroe avocado. And that's what we're going to do. So let me just take a look and see if anyone has any questions to start. Let's see here. So we got Greater Good. Yeah, Lula is an excellent avocado. You're right about that, Greater. You're 63 and your quarter acre is all you can handle. We're going to talk about that today. So let's dive in. I made some notes. I actually put some thought into this one. And today we're going to talk about the planning aspects. What are the things you need to be thinking about? We're also going to talk about the business aspects, the financial aspects, the continuity aspects, and then the also the personal finance side of things. What you need to do, because you can't put your family in the poorhouse, right? If you've got a family, if you're raising kids, they got to get to school, they got to have clothes, they got to have food. You can't just one day get pissed off at your boss and say, screw you, I'm going home and start a farm. So let's take a look here. The first thing I'd like to talk about is this idea of off-grid living. You're seeing a lot of this lately, and I think COVID and the lockdowns was the pandemic and the lockdowns was a real motivator for. There already was an interest in sort of a niche, a little culty sort of thing there about this idea of off-grid living. And then 2020 came along, and a lot of people realized, wow, it might be best if I was a little more self-sufficient. It's been 3 years now, almost 4 years, 3.5 years, I guess. And you see a lot about people living off grid. I consider myself and my family soft grid, which is a term I made up. I'm not an off grid liver. I mean, right now, this moment, I am very much on the grid. I am talking to you through a connection made possible because of technology, because of electricity, because of my local power plant and your local power plant. And the fact that there's electricity in your house and my house, right? The fact that you're on a phone or on a laptop, where right now you and I are very, very much on the grid. And I think a lot of these people who talk about off grid living, they're also a bit more on the grid than they'd like to talk about. I have a feeling the people that are truly off the grid, we really don't hear much about them. But I like to describe my style of living and my family style of living as soft grid. Yes, I've got electricity coming into my home, but I also have the ability to produce my own electricity. Now, I can't produce it cheaper than I get it from the grid, but I can produce it in times of emergency, or if the power goes out, or if I need electricity in a part of my land that isn't wired. I can generate my own electricity. I leave my phone at home a lot. My phone isn't loaded up with apps. I try to buy things using cash whenever I can. I our car, we have old cars. You know, my wife drives a 2013 Jeep. The Jeep's 10 years old. You know, it's got like roll down windows with the actual handles. My car is almost 30 years old. I have 26 years old, something like that. I drive a 1997 Dodge Dakota. And I don't drive that as a novelty. I don't drive it because it's a classic car. I drive it because I like it. It's simple. I don't know if I have the key in my pocket, but I walk around with a key, just one little key. You know, I don't have this big electric fob that I got to like stuff into my pocket and look for all the time. And if I lose it, it's going to be $600 to fix. I'd say the only thing I would prefer about that truck is if it too had roll down windows. It's got a electronic windows, you know. And this is a guy with a degree in computer science talking to you now. I there was a time in my life where I not only embraced technology, I was one of the people during the tech boom pushing the adoption of technology. I eventually got to a place in my life where I felt like, and my observation and what I saw in my customer base was that the software I started out developing, and as my career advanced, that I was actually selling to people, was not making their lives easier. It was just allowing them to manage a more complicated life. You know, the idea was you got this cell phone, you could take it home, you could be reached anytime. You got a BlackBerry, we got email, right? The idea is you'll be more efficient, you'll get more done in the 8 hours of your day. Well, that's not what happened at all. It made you available at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. It made people wonder if they sent you a message, why you didn't get back to them in a half hour. For the healthcare industry that I used to sell technology to, it made it so that instead of just having 5 or 6 or a dozen insurance plans they needed to manage, because you're managing on paper, a computer allows them to a computer allows them the capability to manage thousands of different insurance plans, which just added complication to the system. But when you go to the doctor today, it ain't much different than when you went to the doctor 30 years ago. You still got to wait a long time. He still rushes through the visit. He still probably gets it wrong as far as what's wrong with you. And you got to come back and do it all over again. And oh, by the way, it costs a lot of money. But what you don't see is behind the scenes, there's a lot more complication. And that was all the result of technology. So I decided I wanted just a calmer life. I used to yearn. I used to think I wanted to go back to my hometown, and then where I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And then one day it hit me. I don't want to go back to my hometown in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I want to go back to my hometown in Scranton, Pennsylvania, in the 1980s. I want to go back in time. And when that became clear to me, I said, you know what? When you were a kid growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania in the 1980s, what did you do? And I said, well, I wore jeans and t-shirts, I wore boots and sneakers. I was dirty a lot. I didn't have to worry about having clean fingernails, and I liked living that way. And I said, I got to get out of this corporate game somehow. And on top of that, I knew I was going to get laid off at some point anyway, because no one gets out of that game alive. And I started planning the second half of my adult life, the second phase of my career. And having gone through the technology crash in 1999, 2000, having gone through the credit and housing crash in 2007, 2008, I realized that things could be going great. And then all of a sudden, Monday morning, it's over. Your boss comes in, sends you home. Even as a manager myself, I had to lay people off and send them home. I would walk people to their cars. They're crying on my shoulder, with their little box of, little plants and stuff they had at their desk, right? And and knew that eventually that was going to happen to me too. And I said, you better come up with multiple ways of making some money, multiple ways of being able to support your family. And while you're on the road to doing that, save a lot while you're at it. So let me take a quick little break, look and see if we have any questions here. Hey Rim, how you doing, Bubba? EC, best regards from Turkey. Wow, you're here from all the way from Turkey. I wish I could ship to you over there. Is it true that the price for trees are becoming more expensive? Video for Geeks asked that question. Yeah, that is true. There's actually a boom in backyard gardening. There's a boom in food production at home. People are sometimes you can't find chickens. You can't find little chicks in the supply stores because people aren't even going to farms. They're just growing stuff in their backyards. And as we know, when there's an increase in demand and supply remains flat, the price goes up. So that's absolutely happening, and that's an excellent question. Corby Jungle, he loves avocado. Hey Frosty, Bubba, how you doing, man? That's a little different, right? I'm usually on your streams. Now you're on one of mine. Godsmack 12, please say hello to us. You're watching in Florida. Hello. And then Jay Johnson, smart man, listen and learn, folks. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate that. Anybody who chimes in, if I know you personally, if you've been here to the farm for a visit, or if we've corresponded, in other ways, I might not know what your YouTube handle is. So let me know who you are. Let me get a little sip of coffee here. So let's get into my first thing, which is, if you're in a 9 to 5 and you're working a job and you kind of want to get out. For a lot of people, it's a dream. For a lot of people, it's a fantasy. It's something that would be very hard to execute on. But I think we can all execute on our dreams and all execute on our fantasies, if depending on what the timeline is. Today's Sunday. If you just want to walk into your boss tomorrow and quit, you're probably on the wrong timeline. But maybe if you set up a 5-year plan or a 6-year plan or even a 10-year plan, depending on your age and what it is you're where you're at in life, you might be able to do that. And so we talked about this concept of off-grid living. I started to talk about how myself and my family are soft grid. And just a little background for me. I was 22 years at one of the world's largest corporations. I think at times it's like the third biggest corporation in the world. It's been around since the 1840s, 500 million employees. I was making really good money, flying all over the place, wearing suits and ties, doing really good. It was a great career. And I didn't hate it. I wasn't there like, oh, I got to get out of this. I loved it. I enjoyed it. But I knew it wasn't me, and I knew it wasn't how I wanted to spend all of my life. But I knew if I spent some portion of my life doing that, I'd be able to save, I'd be able to invest, and I would be able to set myself up for more of like living that dream life, which I feel like I'm doing right now. I wanted to make changes when I hit like my late 30s, my early 40s, but I couldn't. I couldn't walk away from the healthcare plan. I couldn't walk away from the savings. My retirement wasn't funded enough yet, and I know that's the position a lot of you guys are in. So I had to work toward it. And the nice thing is when you're in a situation like this, like I'm describing now, even if you've got frustration that you can't walk away from the situation you're in, one great way to ease that frustration is to start working toward what your eventual goal is. And that's what I did. I took years to work toward it. And so, if your goal is to have a homestead, if your goal is to have a small farm or something like that, this even applies if you want to start your own contracting business or a bed and breakfast or a food truck or something like that. There's nothing stopping you from educating yourself and doing your prep work after your 9 to 5. And one of the first things I think you need to do to do something like that is you have to really educate yourself on what being an entrepreneur is. People think, oh, I'm going to start a farm, I'm going to start a homestead, and you like buy a piece of land and put a pitchfork over your shoulder and walk out into the field in the morning, and Mr. Bluebird lands on your shoulder, and you're just shoveling hay to the cows and digging up potatoes and eating these big meals. And it's not that way. It's a business, and it's a business like any other business. And having been a big businessman myself in the corporate world and dealt with a lot of big businessmen, these farmers are equally savvy in business. These guys are multimillionaires. These guys know what they're doing. And you know what? They ain't focused on like how much fertilizer and how much water. They're running a business. And even if your plan is to homestead and just be self-sufficient and you don't really need the income, you don't really want to sell, you still are going to need to manage your household like it was a business, because if you fail to manage things right, you're not going to be able to feed your family and you're going to have to go back to your 9 to 5. So you got to focus on, so a couple of the things I think you could educate yourself on is finances. Learn business, how business works. Read some books about entrepreneur, watch some YouTube videos on being an entrepreneur, meet some entrepreneurs, meet some people who have started small business and succeeded, meet some people who've started small business and failed. And also management and leadership, very, very important. And on the topic of finance, the best thing I ever did, I don't know if it would be the best thing for you, but the best thing I ever did for my own financial situation was read this book right here, Personal Finance for Dummies. I did a video about it and I talked about this book once before, but this book talks about how to become an expert over your personal finance. They don't teach it in school. Odds are your parents didn't teach it to you. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you have like a rich uncle or you got a friend with a dad who, somehow manages money the right way and you could pick up a little bit. But if you decided you never skied before and you wanted to learn to ski, you'd buy a book on skiing, right? If you never lifted weights, you'd go buy like Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, right? Well, most of us don't really know how to manage our finances. Most of us are dummies when it comes to finance. Why not get yourself a book and learn about it? Spend some time educating yourself. And what I learned about this book is the importance of having proper insurance, because the last thing you want to do is go backwards. You're advancing in life. If you don't have insurance, you could go all the way back, not to the beginning, but even before where you started from. You could get ruined without proper insurance. The next thing they say is minimize your tax exposure. Pay as little taxes as you have to. Find ways to save your money and earn your money so you don't blow it all on taxes. The next thing they talk about is pay yourself first, which means if you currently have debt, work all that debt down. Now, maybe if you have a cheap mortgage or a cheap student loan or something like that, you could let that draw on. But if you've got consumer debt, get rid of your credit card debt, get rid of your car debts, get rid of whatever debt you have for toys and trinkets and gadgets that you've bought. And then the last thing they say is they talk about then with whatever excess you have, you can look into investing to make your money start to work for you. Excellent book. I highly recommend it. And everything I just talked about, you're going to need to know if you're going to run your own small farmer homestead. Let's take a break. And I think I'm going to try this sapodilla here. And let me look. Okay, so this is a tropical fruit called a sapodilla. Over in the Philippines, I hear people from California, they refer to them as chicos. And I just got a text from, or a YouTube comment from a guy in India today. He also said they call them chicos. This variety, I can't remember the name of it. It's got an A, a T, an O, a Y, and another A in it. I don't know, a Toya or something like that, or an Toya. This is the macaque variety, M-A-K-O-K. These grow smaller and you get a lot more on the tree. These are a little bit bigger. So let me try this guy. This is the first year that the tree that this one came from fruited. These are a delicious, delicious tropical fruit. Their origin is Central America, but now you can get them all over the world. And they've got this beautiful brown to orange colored flesh. And they taste like a combination of brown sugar and cinnamon. It's one of the tropical fruits that you almost feel like it's man-made. You can't believe it came from nature. Let me see if anyone has any questions before I bite into this guy. Hey, Neeraj, I'm supposed to call you this week, man. How you doing? Thank you for getting onto this stream. It's God, you probably haven't seen me give a presentation in 15 years, right? It's been a long time, Neeraj. Really great to see you, man. And we'll talk this week. Thanks for stopping in. Frosty, you didn't get your bananas this year, but you're hoping to get some next year. Yeah, Frosty, your trees are small and you live in Vermont, my man. It's probably already snowed where you are, which is not exactly banana growing territory, but I know how much time, care, and effort you put into your trees. And I know you're going to get bananas soon. Julia Kressler, hey Tom from Orlando, Florida. How you doing, Julia? I don't know if we ever met. Maybe we've met at like a mango thing or something like that, but I appreciate you getting on. EC, same thing happening in Turkey right now. Everyone escaping from big cities to live I think what you meant to say was a dream life in the countryside and survive on their own. Yeah, and Frosty, I never tried that fruit. Frosty, next time I send you a box of fruit, I'll put a few in. But here goes. I'm going to take a bite of this variety. I haven't tried one of these yet. Let me try this. Oh my God. Mm. Oh my God. Wow. That was so good. I get yelled at when I talk with my mouth full, so I wanted to eat that mouthful first. But that sapodilla is a delicious fruit. Now I've eaten my macaque tree has fruited the last 3 years, so I'm very familiar with how these guys taste. But I'm gonna have one now anyhow, uh, just to kind of compare it. You see here the meat is a little bit of a different color. It's not quite as orange as this guy here. It's a little bit duller, but it's got a very similar flavor. And actually, I cut it open. You can eat the skin of these. Mm, mm. Oh my God. Mm. That is so freaking good. Mm, man. Let me get another bite of this. I wish you guys were here with me to try this. You've heard me say it a million times, but I'm like the Italian grandma who sits there, making her sauce all day. I'd rather sit and watch you enjoy it than enjoy it myself. I get a tremendous amount of joy out of watching someone eat a piece of fruit that I grew. Although I might fight you for this sapodilla. So I was saying I've heard it called Chico's. I've also heard it called Nispero. And then whenever I talk about it on my YouTube channel, people tell me the names, the colloquialisms for the parts of the world they come from. So before I dive back in, well, I'll tell you what, Frosty. I mean, yeah, you've decided to get fruit trees that match your climate zone for fruiting plants. I mean, that's always the way to go, right? I mean, you let Mother Nature help you. Why work against Mother Nature? Of course, I know you like the challenge and you like to be able to try to make something fruit where it's not supposed to. So why not do both? And I'm sure that's what you're going to do. Joking atheist, I remember you. You've commented on my page before. You wish me well, thank you. And I have to say, you changed. Oh my God, are you kidding me? I really appreciate. Joking Atheist has said I've changed the direction of his life with our avocado videos. And wow, I mean, I swear I just got like a warm feeling in my chest hearing you say that. So I appreciate it. Dano the Mano, nice nickname. That sounds like something my friends would say if your name was Dan. Tropicals you plant on the south wall of your house. 9B can grow anything if you use microclimates. Yeah, so 9B, you could be a little on the edge there. So you must be in the northern hemisphere, which is why you're planting on the south side of your house. And so they're, microclimate, what he's talking about there, everyone else, when Dano the Mano talks about a microclimate, he's saying he plants on the south side of his house, which means if he's in a northern hemisphere, which I assume, the south side of his house gets more sunlight. So zone 9B, there are tropical fruit. Avocados will grow just fine in 9B. Mangoes might struggle a little bit, but if they're on the south side where they're going to get more sun and heat, they'll do better than if they're on the north side of his house where they'll be in the shade. And you folks up north know what I'm talking about when it snows and you're driving down the street and the south facing yard of someone's house, it'll be grass. But maybe on the north, on the other side of the house where the snow's been in the shade, there still might be a foot of snow. That same principle works for fruit trees. Let's see what else we got here. Cool to see me streaming. Yeah, I hit 100K subscribers, Dano, and my plan was to start streaming. I think I have more to offer people in terms of like life skills, entrepreneurial type things, coaching. And I think that's better done via live stream that's interactive where people can ask questions than me just going up and doing a video. You know what I mean? So I think I'm going to do maybe 2 of these a month. I got to figure it out. I built this little studio and stuff. We'll see here. Did I ever start selling scions? I actually sold scions a few years ago. And the reason I stopped, I used to sell little trees too. The reason I stopped is every state has its own regulations and rules regarding importation of agricultural products. And for a small guy like me, it was hard to keep up with. Whereas selling fruit, it's a lot easier because it's considered a food, not an ag product per se, and the regulations are a lot easier to keep up with. Uh, yeah, Frosty, I saw you had put some blueberries and blackberries and raspberries. I think whenever I go up to Pennsylvania to visit my parents, we're going to take a ride up and try to find you, maybe spend a day with you if you'd be comfortable with it. Joking atheist started with growing from seed, and now you got over 50 trees in the ground. Fantastic, joking. I'm really proud of you for that. That's great. You're going to love it. You're going to love it when you first start getting your fruit. Wanderer of Mumbai, do you have or planning to plant Alfonso in your backyard? Also, how to fertilize mango plants. I think you're referring to the Alfonso variety of mango, right? I don't have that. And right now I'm kind of tight. I don't have any more room for mango, but I did just take out a half a row of avocado trees, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to put more avocados or what I'm going to put there. So who knows? Maybe. Let's see. Yes, Dano, I'm in Florida. And yeah, and you could just come here, send me a text, find my information. You could come here and we could do stuff in person. I just can't ship the stuff. So, okay, back to the agenda. So I talked a little bit about, what are the things you need to consider if you're going to walk away from your 9 to 5 job and maybe start a small farm or a homestead. And again, to just summarize that again, we're talking about financial skills, business skills, management skills, and leadership skills. Notice I didn't talk about spending time learning like the proper way to feed chickens or how to build a chicken coop or the proper way to milk a cow or how to plant tomatoes, which is precisely the skills you're going to need to have. You could learn those at the last minute. You can learn those skills as you're going. But if you don't understand finance, business, and leadership, you're going to fail. And finance, business, and leadership, you could start educating yourself on now before you make your jump to your homestead or small farm. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about finance. It's obvious if you're going to start a farm, you need land. And in order to get land, you're going to need money to buy the land. And that's what a lot of people tend to focus on. But that's not really what your biggest expense across your lifetime is going to be. It might be your single largest thing you ever buy, but you got to keep the lights on. You have to pay for your electricity, or if you're going to make your own, you need to pay for the infrastructure to create your own electricity. But before you even think about saving and investing and coming up with the money to buy the land and buy the equipment and buy your small business, you need to sit down and ask yourself, how old are you? And how long do you plan to live in that homestead lifestyle, that small farm lifestyle? Are you going to die on the farm? Or at some point, do you think you'll sell it and move into a small condo? The average human being makes it to somewhere in their early to mid 80s, right? If you're 60 years old, you got 20 more years to live. And maybe if you have children, they're kind of grown in on their own. If, on the other hand, you're 24 years old and you have 2 little babies and a wife, or 2 little babies and a husband, as the case may be, you've got a good 60 years of having to provide for yourself. And you need to sit down and list what your monthly expenses are going to be over the course of your lifetime. That includes putting buffer for unexpected things. That includes planning in large capital purchases for things like automobiles, for things like tuition if your kid ever plans to go to college, for things like braces if you're going to have children, right? And so before you even think about like shopping around and getting a good deal on a farm, you need to figure out how much money are you going to need to live month to month for the rest of your life. I suggest you do that in a very conservative way. I suggest you overestimate. And then on top of that, I suggest you build in some buffer. And then you build in even more buffer for disasters and unanticipated events. And you know where you can learn how to do all that? Right here in Personal Finance for Dummies. I've recommended this book to, well, millions of people because I talk about it on my YouTube channel, but I've recommended it in person to over 100 people, and maybe 2 people have read it, but whatever. They're the ones whining. They're the ones telling me how lucky I am to have the lifestyle I have. They could have read this too and did the stuff I did, But that's a very important part of what you have to do. You got to think about what your needs are going to be ongoing, and how you're going to meet that. Okay. Then you could put together a budget, and then you'll know how much money you need to earn. Because maybe, like me, you're not going to go off grid, but you're going to go soft grid. Maybe you're going to move out of town, but you're a fireman, but your work shift is like 2 days on, 4 days off, 3 days on, 4 days, whatever the case may be. And you can do that type of working. Maybe you're a nurse and your job will let you work like two 24-hour shifts and then have 5 days off or something like that. There's people who have that kind of lifestyle. Or maybe in a family, you've got the husband, the wife, and a couple of kids. Maybe the decision will be made that one or the other of the spouse will continue to have a traditional job. That way there's guaranteed income and also health care benefits, and then the other spouse will focus on getting the homestead to flourish. Well, you need to think about how you're going to do that so that you could continue to feed and clothe yourselves, feed and clothe your family, and also contribute to your retirement fund. Because I don't care how healthy you are when you're young and when you're middle aged, eventually you're not going to be able to go out and pick tomatoes and bring them to a farmer's market and sell them. We all get old. We all need to plan for retirement. The next thing I want to talk about is this idea of an emergency reserve. So once you know how much you need to spend per year to keep the lights on, to keep things going for your family, you have to ask yourself, do I want to set aside about a year's worth of earnings? Because things come up. In our case, we had a hurricane in September of 2017. A hurricane is not something that's unexpected here in South Florida. I knew at some point, if I live on this farm for 30 years, I'm going to have to deal with a hurricane or two. And when that hurricane hit us in 2017, it hit at the end of the year. And in avocado farming, you're upside down until you harvest that crop. And my crop happens to be late season variety. So I had paid all year long, and I wait to get a few paychecks at the end of the year to make my money. And guess what? That hurricane hit. And not only were all these avocados on the ground, but my trees were on the ground as well. So not only did I have negative income in 2017, I also had the cost of repairing the grove and getting it up and ready. And then in 2018, I didn't get a lot of avocados because when you get trees that get knocked over and knocked down and you cut them and stand them back up, they're more interested in growing and trying to survive than they are in producing avocados. So that was 2 years' income I lost, 2017 and 2018. Then 2019, we had a good year. Then 2020 hit, COVID hit. No big deal. I live on a farm. We live in the Everglades. I didn't have to worry about social distancing. I'm already social distance. I'm down a dirt road. People can't even find my house. And then I go out to fix something. All of a sudden, boom, and I hear an explosion. My house is on fire. And in 2020, we had a house fire. We had to move into a hotel for 7 months. Now, insurance covered everything except the $2,500 deductible. But when you're living in a hotel and you have no electricity and no infrastructure at your farm, which is how you make your income, our income was hit again. And luckily for us, when we did our planning, we were very conservative. We overestimated what our needs would be. We overestimated what we would need for reserve. And when those two disasters hit, we were able to weather the storm. You'll need to do that also. It's just like in business, they call it business continuity. I'm ready for another bite of sapadilla and to look at some of y'all's questions. So Daniel's talking about chickens. So let's see where we go. Oh, you guys are all talking to each other. Okay, Frosty, Frosty. Yeah, you'll be tough, zone 5, zone 4, but like I said, you take care of your stuff. Dano, you keep chickens. Interesting. Yeah, that's probably a next step for us. We used to have a neighbor on each side of us, and we would trade them fruit for eggs. We'd go over with a basket full of fruit, and both neighbors would hang a basket full of their eggs, and in one case, milk and cheese also. But the one neighbor moved away, and the new folks don't grow chickens. And the other neighbor on the other side, the members of the family that took care of the chickens and the cows are gone, and they don't really harvest the milk or the eggs anymore. I probably ought to ask them if we can. Let's see. Joking atheist. On the bad news, you were diagnosed with, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Uh, ah, that's rough, man. Well, this is what we're talking about now. I mean, this is a part of life, right? And these are the things that hit us in the second halves of our lives, our unexpected illnesses. I almost lost my wife. She was very, very sick for 2 years, hardly got out. I mean, couldn't get out of bed. I had to carry her to the car to take her to the doctors until she got better. It's very, very difficult. And these are the kind of things we need to plan for. Frosty, yeah, the Chester Blackberry might be a little too. You need a little more heat than you all got up there. And okay, so let me get a little bite of my sapadilla here. If you've joined late, I'm talking about homesteading, starting your own small farm, and then every now and then I take a break to take a bite of fruit and answer some questions. Mm, mm. Oh my God, that's good. And I try not to talk while I'm eating the fruit. And the fruit I'm eating right now is called sapadilla, also called chicos, also called nisperos. The Jamaicans call them naseberries. They are delicious. They've got the texture of a pear. They got that little grittiness of a pear, and they are so, so good. Mm, mm. Well, I'll tell you what, Dano, for a guy who's been sick with been diagnosed with a serious illness, your ambition is I'm impressed with your ambition and how much energy you are putting into working your land there. Let me get a sip of coffee here and we'll go on to the next topic. I'm watching the clock here too because I want to catch the second half of the Eagles game today. Okay. So we talked about you need to understand what your monthly budget's going to be. We talked about how much money you're going to need per month just to keep the lights on for you and your family. So before you even think about what your investment's going to be in your farm or small business, you need to know that. So whatever you invest in, right, at a certain point, you're not going to be making money. So you need to make sure you've got enough money not only to make the investment, but to keep the lights on for your house until you hit your anticipated break even. Another big thing a lot of people don't consider is, oh, I got to buy a farm. Okay, I'm going to pay for the land. I'm going to have a mortgage. I'm going to do this and that, right? Tractors are expensive. Mowers are expensive. Chainsaws are expensive. You might need a little golf cart or a little side by side or one of them John Deere Gators, right? Those things are all very expensive. Then when you buy those things, you don't want to just let them sit out in the sun all day. You don't want to let them sit out and get wet in the rain. And so you're going to need to have some structures and build some buildings and stuff like that. So when you're out looking for your property, make sure there's some barns or some sheds or things you could put your equipment in. They could be unexpected expenses that come up. And before we move away from finance, I don't get paid or nothing, but like I said, this was a life-changing book for me. Read this book and embrace the principles, and you'll be successful at whatever small business you want to start. Okay, so let's talk about now skill development. Let's talk about self-sufficiency. Let's talk about skill development. So we talked a little bit about the things you need to think of from a financial perspective. Now let's talk about skill development. Again, like I said earlier, people think it's like, oh, I better learn how to feed the chickens and milk the cows and dig a hole and put seeds in it. No, that's not what you need to learn. And in fact, you're probably going to be it's probably going to be such a big project that you ain't going to be the one out there doing all the work. You're going to have employees doing it for you. And they're going to know all that stuff. And that's where the business knowledge, and that's where the leadership knowledge, and that's where the management knowledge comes into play. And so, like I said earlier, I'd rather see you spend time learning how to run a business than learning how to grow a tree. That'll come. Okay, so in a small farm or a homestead, even if you're homesteading, like I said before, and you're not setting up a farm per se to grow a crop and sell it, you're not going to grow just enough tomatoes and just enough grapes and just enough peaches and just enough pears. You're going to have excess, and you're probably going to need to sell them or trade them or something like that. So you got to think about it like you're running a business. And if you are going into it with the intent, like I'm going to start this honey farm, or in my case, an avocado farm or an apple farm or chickens, and you're going to sell eggs, you need to know this: all the surrounding farms around you, those people are way better at it than you. They've been doing it their whole lives. In fact, they probably learned it from their parents and grandparents. They've got all the connections, they've got all the right tools and processes. They know exactly what to do, and they're going to be your competition. And you're going to be stubbing your toe, and you're going to be learning as you go. It's not like if you're watching football today, I think, I can't remember, it's either a bank or it's like, I think they call themselves Square or something. It's like one of those little, those millennial Gen Zs where you just like pay for stuff real easy. um it's like, oh, Sarah was sick of her job and wanted something more. And we helped her set up her dream honey farm or some, jive like that. And then here's like Sarah, and she's in these brand new farmer jeans and not a hair out of place. And she's all happy, bagging up the honey in these beautiful little jars with nice little string and little designs on them. And, her customers are all happy and they're high-fiving each other. That's that's not how it goes. You're now, your neighbor down the street that's third generation has been doing this for 15 years might be a little bit like that for them. It's not going to be like that for you at first. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be difficult, and you need to be aware of that. Uh, again, I ain't so much worried about you knowing how to milk your cow and feed your chickens, but I think it's important for you to have mechanical skills. You need to know how to fix stuff. Now, why is that important? Well, people know if you're broke down somewhere, you're on a road trip, the best person you can find is a farmer, because farmers have all the tools and farmers know how to fix stuff. Why? Not because we're cheap, not because we'd rather fix it our own than pay a mechanic. When a piece of our equipment breaks, we need it fixed right then and there. If you've got a field of tomatoes and whatever equipment you're using to pick those tomatoes breaks, if you don't fix it today or tomorrow, you miss the market. All that money you put into growing those tomatoes, right down the toilet it goes, because you don't get your tomatoes to market. Or even if you delay by a day, maybe the price drops, and you could have got $1 more per bushel the day before. So when something breaks, farmers need to get it up and running fast. And that's how it's going to be for you. You're not in the city. You're not going to be able to just drop your car off at the mechanics. You're not going to be able to just take that chainsaw in and get it back later that afternoon. You're going to have to schedule time. You're going to have to wait. Then they're going to tell you 2 days, but they're going to keep it 2 weeks. And then you're going to get it back and it ain't going to be fixed anyway. And then they're not going to answer the phone. You need to have mechanical skills. And the specific mechanical skills I think are important are small engines. You're going to be using a lot of small engines. Gasoline. You might have a small tractor, a mower. You're going to have weed whackers and chainsaws and all kinds of stuff like that. In our case, we've got a gasoline generator for when the power goes out. You're going to need to know how to fix your own small engines. Not only are you going to go into the poorhouse, every dollar you make on a small farm, if you have to pay someone to solve all your problems for you, you're going to wind up upside down every year. But you also need to get that equipment up and running. If you've got a piece of equipment and you've hired a crew to be out there for the day, and it's 10 in the morning and that equipment goes down, you still got to pay that crew. I mean, if you don't pay them for the day's work that you promised you'd pay them, the next time you need a crew, they ain't going to come out and work for you. Diesel's important too. A lot of farm equipment is diesel, so it's good to have at least a working knowledge and how to fix, some of the more simple, some of the more common things that come up with diesel engine. Hydraulics. A lot of the tools we use are, the big equipment, the heavy equipment, all uses hydraulics. Very simple system. You just need a few tools and some knowledge. You can learn how to do hydraulics. Welding. The nice thing about being a farmer is when you learn a new skill, you're not learning it to charge people to do it, right? People ask me, can you weld? I say, yeah, I can weld, but I'm the crappiest welder you've ever met in your life. I could weld something for a piece of my own equipment because I don't care. No one's paying me to do it. No one's going to see it. No one's going to judge me on it. But if you need something done that like people are going to see, it's like on your car, it's something for your house or something like that, you got to go to a pro. But if you're a farmer and you just need to, put something back together that cracked, get yourself a cheap welding, go to Harbor Freight, get yourself a cheap welder, watch a couple videos, practice it, learn to weld. That's a skill you'll need. Let's see. Oh yeah, another big one. My son and I, we fix everything in the house. If the dishwasher, the dryer, the washer, the air conditioning, whatever goes, my son and I have learned how to fix it all. Again, when your income drops, my income dropped 90% when I left corporate America and became a farmer. My income dropped 90%. There was a time in my life, if my air conditioner broke, it was more effective for me to pay the guy whatever he wanted per hour because I was going to make way more than that for that hour working my job. Well, now that's not the case. And over the course of a year, if I fix, 3 or 4 appliances and maybe fix the AC once or twice and do a few things on my car, that's maybe $3,000 to $4,000 I would have spent to other people that I'm now keeping. And that's better than income because saving money is always better than making money because you don't pay taxes on it. So you get to know basic plumbing, basic electrical, how to do up some basic woodworking, just basic stuff around the house. And who cares? If you make it worse, you could always hire the pro you were going to hire anyhow. And like I said, learning how to fix stuff yourself, it's not just about saving the money that you would have spent with a pro. It's about you could get going on it right away, get it done. And even if it's a 6 out of 10 fix, what you fix still works. If someone else comes and fix something and it doesn't work, then you got to go through the whole cycle of waiting for them all over again. And now let's talk about relationships. So if you want to get into this farming lifestyle, you want to get into this homesteading lifestyle, relationships are very, very important. You need to have mentors and advisors. You need to have people that could tell you how they did it. And it's very interesting in farming. And in the corporate world I was in, there was vendors and we competed against each other. And almost exclusively, if you were my competitor, you and I were competitors, and that was it. We had competitors, we had customers, we had suppliers, and it was very discreet. In the farming world today, you and me might be competitors because we might grow the same crop. We might have a bunch of okra we got to get to market, right? And we're competing. But maybe you also run a roadside fruit stand and you don't grow mangoes, but I do. Well, when mango season rolls around, you are my customer. And then maybe down the line, back to the idea of welding. Maybe you're a very skilled welder and I have a job that exceeds my capabilities. Now I'm your customer and I have you come to my farm and weld something for me. There is very much a community, a mutually benefiting community. I talked about the way we trade, fruit with our neighbors. Speaking of which, I'm going to cut a piece of this star fruit. We grow this delicious star fruit, and I gave my tree a huge, huge haircut about 6 months ago, and it just started fruiting again. And this star fruit is so good. And it happens to be right next to the fence of my neighbor that we used to share eggs with, and we would support each other. They would always tell me, if you need to have a FedEx package delivered, and since you're never around, well, we live down like a long dirt road, and I'm always out in the grove, and I have another grove that's off site. Whereas this woman is home a lot, just send your packages to our house and we'll bring them to you. And then on the other hand, if they needed some trees cut or some heavy equipment or something, I could help them out. And then I would leave them a bag of our look at this star fruit, how beautiful that is. I'd leave them a bag of fruit. They'd leave me a bag of eggs. Let me take a bite of this and see if we have any questions. Okay. Atheist, joking atheist. Is there a way to identify an avocado tree without it bearing fruit yet? Yes and no. And by that, I mean, I can't. Maybe there's certain trees I could give you a good guess of what it is. And some of the people I know that have been in this industry their whole lives could give you a better guess. But generally speaking, we need to see the fruit to identify the tree. Now, if you told me you have 3 trees in your backyard and two of them are of one variety, and or let's say you have 4 trees, 2 are of one variety and 2 are of another, or there's 3 varieties, which ones are which, I can probably tell you if I sort of know which ones you already grow. Like I could tell a choquette tree from a Monroe tree, but if you send me a picture of your Monroe tree it looks like any other tree. But if you told me you had a Monroe as well as some others, I could tell you which one it was by looking at the leaves. But no, for the most part, we need to see the fruit. Joking atheist. Frosty, you wish you had a tropical fruit farm. That's why I'm doing this tutorial. You're a young man, you're a smart man, you are an assertive and aggressive man, and you're capable. And I believe at your age and with your capabilities, if you set your mind to having a tropical fruit farm, you will eventually have one. I was 44 years old when I eventually, well, how old was I? I was thinking 2013. I was 42 years old when I got this farm, and it takes time. And yes, you're looking to move to Florida. Yeah, you've mentioned that to me before. You're scared of trying new fruit. I don't believe that, Frosty, because you've taken some real challenges with the stuff you're growing. Joking atheist, it's funny learning how to cost save, which is a learned skill, is generating new personal skills and personal growth. You're right. It's true. And in business or in your personal life, a dollar saved, they say like a penny saved is a penny earned. That's not true. Now, let's modernize this. Let's say a dollar saved is a dollar earned. Not true. A dollar saved is more than a dollar earned, because when you earn a dollar, the government takes 20, 25, 30% of it, right? They take it in taxes. So a dollar earned is really 75 cents, but a dollar saved, you save all that money. Also, when you earn a dollar, you usually trade something for it, right? You usually spend an hour working or something like that. Sometimes when you save money, you stop doing something. So you're not only saving money, you're saving time. So a dollar saved is way more than a dollar earned. Ronald, how you doing? Welcome to the stream. I'm going to take another bite of my star fruit here. All right, so we talked about finance, we talked about business, we talked about skill development, and I'm starting to talk about relationships, right? So like I said, in this world, this homesteading world, this small farming world, you need people in your life, and you're going to help each other. Sometimes you're going to be partners. Other times you're going to be competitors. Other times you're going to be customer and vendor. It all depends on what's going on. And that's why it's important to have good relationships. There's times someone's going to need you just for help, just for muscle, or you might have a skill or a certain tool that they don't have. You go help them. Next time around, when you need some muscle or you need a tool they don't have, they're going to help you. And it's very, very important to have those relationships. Now, the nice thing about it is you're leaving the city because you're sick of people, right? That's one of the reasons you want to leave the city. And I'm telling you, you got to have relationships. These ain't the kind of people that's going to be inviting you to like every christening and birthday and wedding, and they're just like you. They're down a long dirt road for a reason, just like you, but they understand the value of mutual support. You're also going to have suppliers, right? You're going to need to buy stuff. You're going to need fertilizer. You're going to need different types of soil. Depending on what your needs are, you're going to have relationship with suppliers. And no matter how good you are at fixing stuff, eventually things are going to break that you're going to have to go to a professional. You're probably not going to rip a motor out of your Ford F-150 and put one in. I mean, if you're capable of doing that, you're already capable of doing all the rest of this stuff. You're going to have advisors. You want to just have some friends that you could go out fishing or take them out playing pool or something, and pick their brains. And then another big one is customers. You're going to have to identify your customers. And people think, oh, it's easy. I'll grow this honey, or I'll grow these tomatoes, and then I'll just go to the local farmer's market and set out my table and I'll sell my stuff. Well, that's not very innovative, right? I mean, everyone's doing that, and everyone's table is selling the exact same stuff you are, depending on where you're at and what time of year it is, right? It's you're not really bringing anything new to the table. Your honey is just like everyone else's. It's a commodity. My avocados are just like this Monroe avocado right here is like every other Monroe avocado from whatever farm it came from, as is this sapodilla, this macaque sapodilla, as is this variety of star fruit. So you got to think about who is your market. And who are you targeting? And who are your customers going to be? And how are you going to reach out to that customer base? And this all needs to be written down. Everything I'm talking about today should be written down as a plan. Maybe you dedicate yourself an hour or 2 hours a week. Maybe 2 hours a week is a lot, but maybe an hour a week or maybe 2 hours twice a month to sit down, if you're married, to sit down with your spouse and do this planning and, get excited about it. Okay, so we talked about mechanical skills. Yeah. Okay. So then we talked about the relationships. Now back to this idea of self-sufficiency. So like I said, it's not like you see on TV where the girl gets the little square credit card, company, and they help her set up her small business. And the only dirt she has is at the end of the day, she goes like, "Phew," and blows a hair out of her eye, and that's like the hardest part of her day. That ain't the way it really goes. When you decide to take on a self-sufficient lifestyle, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And when you're getting your water off a well, and when the well pump goes down in the middle of the night and you wake up in the morning to take your shower, you got to go out and fix that pump. When in my case, I am the only house off whatever network node or whatever. I'm the only house off of it. So when the electricity goes out here, I get the little notification. It says number of customers affected, one. Well, I'm very low on the priority list. When they could do one fix and bring 400 houses back up, they're getting to me last, right? And so I need to think about continuity. I need to think about what to do when the power goes out, what to do when there's bad storms. You're forgotten about. I mean, I am on the edge of the Everglades. I don't know if you saw my video. I found a Burmese python, an 8-foot damn python out in my land the other day. We've got a canal just over here. I could throw a baseball into it. My son and his friends go swimming over there. I got to stand lookout. We get gators. I mean, we are essentially in the Everglades. We're in, and if you decide to homestead, that's where you're going to be too. You don't homestead in the middle of New York City, right? So you got to think to yourself, I'm self-sufficient. How am I going to, how am I going to get my basic necessities, my water, my electricity? What's going to happen in the case of an emergency? When we had our house fire in November of 2020, my wife and I had already rehearsed the scenario. We already had a plan in the event that we ever had a drastic emergency where we needed ambulances or fire. And the plan was that one of us, probably her, would get in the Jeep and drive down our dirt road to the main road and wait for the fire trucks while I maybe tried to fight the fire or do whatever else. Or if it was an ambulance situation where she's injured or having, a heart attack or something, I'm the one who goes and makes that drive. And when that fire hit, we executed on that plan. We called 911, and I literally, as I was watching my wife drive away down the dirt road in her Jeep, I could see her brake lights come on. I could already hear the sirens coming. It took them 4 minutes to get to the entrance to our dirt road. Took them another like 8 minutes to navigate the dirt road, but they got here quick. But if I was a regular house on a regular asphalt road, they would have got here in 4 minutes. Instead, it took them about 12 or 15, which is like 4 times longer. And in the case of an electrical fire, that's a lot. You got to think about that kind of stuff. What are you going to do if grandma's visiting and she has another heart attack? What are you going to do if you're home alone and you break your leg and your wife ain't going to be home for another 12 hours? You got to think this stuff through. Whereas when you're in a city, when you got neighbors, when you're in a condominium, you have different kinds of options. Think about it. You also got to think about redundancy. So we have two wells. So if something happens with one well, I got another way of getting water. One well is run off of a diesel pump. The other is run off an electric pump. Both wells, I also have a hand pump. So I've got like 4 levels of redundancy. For me to run out of water, I need both my diesel pump and my electric pump and both of my hand pumps to fail. And even if they do, I have a spare hand pump in the garage. It's not quite, in great shape, but it'll do the job, right? You got to have redundant systems. We've got a generator to produce electricity, and then I just happen to notice here. I'll show you these little batteries that we have. Hold on one second. You can get these car jumper. Hang on. You can get these car jumper batteries, which I think it's good to have in case, when you live on a farm, you also have a lot of batteries, a lot of car batteries and small engine batteries. It's good to have one of these jumpers. But one of the things you can do is actually run electricity off the battery, and you could run a Wi-Fi network off of one of these for 10 to 12 hours. So, for about 7 or 8 hours, I could run, in one room some light and also have internet. The one thing you won't have, of course, is air conditioning. So we've got, the electrical that comes to the house from Florida and Power and Light. We also have a generator, just a little one. I can carry it around. And I've got this particular room set up. The generator has enough power that it could run a little portable air conditioning unit that I have over there in the corner. And I've got the window set up so I can put the exhaust from the AC out. And in this room, my wife, myself, and my son, we can sleep. We can have air conditioning. We have light. And we also have Wi-Fi is right there in my kid's room. We can run the Wi-Fi off that as well. Redundant systems. We also have a limitless supply. Well, I shouldn't say that. We've got a huge supply of firewood. There really is no such thing as a limitless supply of firewood. You go through firewood really fast. But our stove is propane. We also have 2 propane grills and a propane burner outside. And we've got, at any given time, 60 gallons of propane. So we can continue to cook. But then we also try to cook on a fire when we lose electrical and when we're living more off the grid than soft grid. And it's good to have firewood. And we've got a couple of fire pits also, and we could survive, cooking on the fire pit. Talked about the wells, talked about the electricity. Yeah, so the thing I think you need to do is think about what type of disasters are you prone to in the region you live in. For us here in South Florida, it's hurricanes. Hands down, it's hurricanes. We also get bad summer storms. You get tornadoes and stuff like that where you're going to lose power for, half a day, maybe 12, 15 hours, something like that. But in the case of a hurricane, you might be without electricity for over a week, sometimes for a month. You may live somewhere where there's blizzards, you get snowed in. You may live somewhere where there's like monsoon type raining, you get mud storms, or the road you use to get in and out, or to get your supplies in and out, and to get your supplies in and your product out might get so muddy that it's unusable for part of the year. These are the kind of things you need to think about. Another big one that people don't realize is it's tough to take a vacation when you live this type of lifestyle. I don't care what business you open. If you open a pizzeria, if you sell carpet, like at a retail, carpet store, something like that, probably forget about taking vacation for the first 5 years because you got to do everything. You got to be there every day. You got to keep that stuff running. But the thing is, when you have a farm or a homestead, uh, animals need to be fed at certain times. There's certain care that they need, right? Your crops need to be taken care of at certain times, and when they're ripe, they need to be picked at certain times. And you can't be taking selfies underneath the Eiffel Tower when your tomatoes are ready to be picked. So you got to really think about when you go into it. Now, the nice thing is, where we are, it almost feels like vacation. Like a lot of vacation is about like getting people come to places like this for vacation. So with a few tweaks in your mentality, you just take little mini vacations. I'm just taking the weekend off. I'm going to get a few things going. I'm going to let some things slide. We'll come back Sunday night. We'll just do a little weekend trip. But and you really have to think it through. Your life is going to change if you have to milk a cow twice a day, and if you stop milking the cow stops producing milk. You can't miss a day, and so how are you going to deal with that? You got to let your family and friends know that wedding they're having in Los Angeles that everyone's flying in for, or Jamaica or something like that. Maybe don't expect you, or maybe don't expect you until you get things going well enough that you could leave one person behind to keep it running. Or maybe you finally hire like a manager you can trust, or a caretaker to keep things running. And think about what that means for your kids. I know a lot of my son's friends, their sisters are in dance, they're competitive dance, and competitive dance entails a lot of travel. It's a lot of going away. And if that's something you have a daughter that's really, really into, and all of a sudden you move to a farm, you might be taking that away from her because you can't just drop everything and go away for a long weekend, every month. And then we talked about the emergency. You got to anticipate what types of emergencies you can have and what your plan's going to be. All right. Let's cut into this. Yeah, we're coming up on, I'm going to go for about 15 more minutes, and then I'm going to go watch the rest of the Eagles game. But while I look at your questions here, I'm going to cut open this Monroe avocado. Monroe is a late season avocado. It's the bulk of I'd say about 70% of my crop is Monroe. I love Monroe. I think Monroe has a delicious flavor, but also as a grower, it's a very desirable avocado to grow because the trees produce every year. The trees are very resilient. The trees are cold resistant, and they also produce a ton of avocados every year. They're consistent and they're very high volume producers. And I happen to love the flavor. And of the ones I sell, people wait and specifically ask me for the Monroe. Okay, Frosty, you're talking about apples. Let's see, what did I miss here? Okay, greetings from Canada. Hi, Susan. Welcome. Do I sell and ship avocado? I don't sell the trees, Katri. I used to, but particularly California has some very rigid importation requirements, and I'm just too small to afford the certifications and inspections that are necessary to ship to California. In fact, I can't even sell my mangoes. Like when this little guy grows into a mature tree and produces mangoes, unless they change. But right now, California even has a quarantine on mangoes. I can send avocados, and we do those at guacfarm.com, www.guacfarm.com. But we can't sell trees out there. Sorry about that. All right, joking. Have yourself a good sleep down there on the other side of the earth, and we'll talk to you soon. And then we got Jesus. Hey, Jesus, how you doing, buddy? Oh, thank you for the subscription. I appreciate it. Hey, G's here. How you doing, my man? My son asks about you all the time. Thanks for checking in. Ronald, are you serious? You got to go to the ER right when I was talking about emergencies? I hope everything's okay. Check in later and let me know how you're doing. Hey, Jesus, again, I appreciate it. Susan has not heard of the Tropic of Canada. I'm halfway between Toronto and London. I'll look into it. Someone must have made reference to that earlier. Here we go. Have you checked out Tropic of Canada? I don't know what that means. Okay, so someone here who's unnamed has a greenhouse set up, a small pump with a solar panel, and you can leave it for 4 months at a time. Yeah, I mean, that's the point. You got to think about what you got and how you're set up. Ask yourself what would happen if there was a windstorm and your solar panel became non-functioning, which then your small pump doesn't function. If you went away for 4 months, what happens when you get back? Those are the kind of questions you need to think about. And Katri, you are welcome. And Frosty, I appreciate you looking forward to my stream. Now I'm going to just take a quick break, take a bite of this Monroe. Again, I'm not going to keep talking because people get mad at me when I talk with my mouth full. These Monroes are delicious. And see, the nice thing about a lot of these Florida varieties, look, you'd never really be able to, and I love the Hass avocado, don't get me wrong. But the little black wrinkly Hass you get at the grocery store, you can't really like peel them and leave them in spears like this. They're so mushy, they just would kind of mush. Where these keep a nice shape, there's a texture to them. Wow. That is so good. And the nice thing about avocados, they stick to your ribs. There's some sustenance to them. There's a lot of calories there to eat. All right, the last topic I have to talk about before I go and watch the Eagles game today is sales, the business side. We talked about the operational side of running a farm, but at a certain point, you're going to have to bring a crop to market. And if people think, oh, that's easy, I just go to a farmer's market or I have a stand out on the road. It's really not that easy. There are well-established supply chains in the food industry. And it generally goes, I did a video on this a couple weeks ago, but it's farmer to packing house to market, being the supermarket, a fruit stand, or a restaurant or something like that, right? Those are well established product pipelines, and you'll need to find ways to plug in to those pipelines. I have a friend whose son planted like 30 papaya trees or something like that. And he's waiting for them to produce fruit. And basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to someone I know who grows papaya trees on a much larger commercial scale and just be like, hey, the next time you pick, can my buddy have his kid, bring you like a bin of the papayas and you just kind of slide him, the whatever you're getting for them on top of that. And that's because we have a relationship. That goes back to that importance of relationship. But whatever your product is going to be, you need to think about how you're going to sell it. And many of you have probably already tried this. The idea of like selling things online is very appealing, right? And you think, well, all I got to do is make a website, advertise it a little bit, sit back and let the cash roll. And well, it doesn't work that way at all. And I could tell you from my own personal experience, I sell a lot of avocados. I sell thousands of pounds of avocados a week. And if I take my foot off the gas, if I'm not pushing on Instagram and Facebook, and well, I don't push on TikTok anymore. I don't know. I feel like I'm too old for that app or something. And I'm not pushing here on YouTube. My sales drop. But if I come out and I make a new video and people like it, if I'm putting some stuff out on Facebook and Instagram here and there, and I'm pushing that website, my sales go up. I have to keep my foot on the gas. And there's a reason. Again, today's Sunday. If you go turn your TV on, there's a reason you're going to see Ford. Everyone knows who Ford is. McDonald's. Everyone knows who McDonald's is. Budweiser, Coca-Cola, you name it, right? They know they got to push, 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 push. When they take their foot off the gas, people stop buying beer from them. People stop buying their hamburgers. You know what I mean? People stop buying their pickup trucks. And you will need to keep your foot on the gas. You will need to keep that sales engine going if you do plan to sell a product. I don't care how innovative it is. I don't care if you think you've identified like the latest health craze mushroom or some, whatever some new herb that's going to, make people lose weight or something, which is bullshit anyway. But you think that, right? If you don't have a way to market it and directly sell it to people, you're going to fail. And it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to capture a customer base and to capture market share especially in an already established market. Let's see here. So you got to think about it. Who's your market? Who are you selling to? I sell to a lot of tropical fruit lovers. Tropical fruit lover. I mean, my main market are tropical fruit lovers who don't live in South Florida and they can't get access to the tropical fruit they love so much. That's my main customer. That's my main market. My customers tend to be people between the ages of 35 and 65. They tend to be homeowners. They tend to be people who garden and grow themselves, but they might live in places where they can't grow their own tropical fruit. But I know who my customers are, and I know a lot of you by name. I get really happy when I see repeat business, and I know I'm going to go into my little label maker, and your name is already loaded there. And I even though we've never met, I feel like we're friends. You have to have a distribution strategy. Again, okay, you're going to pick a bunch of tomatoes. You're going to go to that farmer's market on Sunday. What if you only sell half of them? What do you do with the other half? And then, you learned your lesson. So next week you only pick half and then you sell out and then you get 10 more people wanting to buy tomatoes for you and you don't have enough. You need to think about what your distribution pipeline is going to be. You also need to think about what your customer connection strategy is. And mine is obviously YouTube. And I'm going to try to do more of these streams going forward. But the way I keep in contact with my customer base is through my YouTube videos and comments. You will need to establish a way to keep in contact with your customer base. And I think the main thought I want to leave you with is well, let's look at some questions first, and then we'll leave you with a thought. I think I'm going to finish off this Sapadilla because, wow, is it good. The cabeza mango. No, I keep hearing about it. But no, I've not planted one of those. Great or good. Frosty. Is the Monstera worth trying? Absolutely, yes. It is It's such a unique flavor, and it is absolutely delicious. And is it dangerous? I don't know that it's dangerous. You hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, they cause kidney stones and stuff like that." I think if you're someone who is prone to kidney stones, that's just like saying peanuts are dangerous. Well, yeah, if you have a peanut allergy, they're dangerous. I apparently some people who get a certain type of kidney stones need to avoid Monstera, but if they get a certain type of kidney stone, they already know the type of food they need to avoid. Um, yes, if you eat the Monstera before it's ripe, it bites back, and it's going to sting your lips and your tongue, but that goes away in about 5 or 10 minutes. But if you let it ripen properly, and I know you love bananas, it's got like this banana, pineapple, strawberry. Oh, it's just such a good flavor, Frosty. You got to send me your address so I can send you some next August. Greater good. Have I planted the Ronnie? No, but I tried one. I think our mutual friend Paul. I think he's our mutual friend, but I think Paul. He gave me. I tried some last year. About when was it? I can't even remember. But anyway, I can't remember. But the Ronnie was delicious. I loved it. It must have been like March or so. He gave me some. Let's see here. What else we got? Tropic of Canada sells all kinds of tropical fruit trees. Oh, I see. So, and he bought them from Alex at Tropical Acres. Okay, so Tropic of Canada. I thought you were talking about some region of the country, like the Bermuda Triangle or something. What you're saying is it's a business, a business that sells trees. Uh, if he got them from Alex at Tropical Acres, then they are not only high quality trees, but the varieties are going to be delicious because they've got the most amazing varieties of mangoes there. And you're right. Yeah, yeah. Keep your foot on the gas. Frosty likes the info. Thank you. Frosty, you're. I'm so glad I met you. You are so good for my ego. And then yeah, gee, you're right. It's not the fruit's fault, right? I mean, look, some people can't eat, like I said, peanuts, and other people can. It's on them to decide. It's on them to manage their own diets. But you could say these fruit I'm eating right here are dangerous slash deadly to someone with diabetes, right? If they're not managing their diabetes properly. Speaking of sugary sweet snacks, let me take a bite of this macaque sapodilla. Mm, mm, man, that's good. Take another chunk of this Monroe. Here's how we eat them. Those of us that are like really in the tropical fruit world, we just cut little spears. Oh, I have part of my spear I didn't finish. Well, I'll cut a new spear. Cut a spear off. If you're feeling adventurous, maybe you put some salt, and then we just eat the fruit. So good. Mm. All right. I got to go watch the second half of this Eagles game, so I'm going to let you all go. Two thoughts I want you to take when we close down this stream. One is, remember, if you're going into homesteading, going into opening up a small farm, it's a business and you got to run it like a business. Even if you're just going to Alaska on a homestead to just be alone and survive on your own, you still are going to need to manage your life like a business. You're going to have expenses, you're going to have costs, you're going to have income, and you're going to have to manage it because in the city, you make mistakes. People are there to help you out. But when you're out on your own, when you're on the edges, when you're on a spacewalk, your mistakes are amplified. And what could be a couple hours without water, a couple hours without electricity in the city could be weeks or even months when you're on the edges of society. And you've got to be very aware of that. You've got to manage things like a business. You got to understand your costs. You got to understand your income. You have to have a reserve set up for unexpected contingencies. You've got to have redundant systems in place so that when your primary system fails, your backup system kicks in. And if that whatever it is you're solving is very important, you probably ought to have a third level. Like I said, we've got electric, we've got a generator, and then we've got our batteries. Don't forget the importance of forming relationships. And if this is a lifestyle you want to live, and you're fresh out of college and you're going to put in about 10 or 15 years in the working world, but you eventually want to move into something like this, start working toward it now. Don't wait till a year before you want to do it. Start doing your push-ups. Start saving your money. Start learning your skills so that you too someday can have yourself a beautiful farm And in my case, grow these beautiful avocados. Look at that painting back there that my friend's mother-in-law did for me. And like I said, this is the Monroe avocado, and we're selling these right now. We sell them at guacfarm.com. GUAC. Let me do that again. I had the hiccups. We sell these at guacfarm.com. GUACFARM.com. It would mean a lot to me. I don't ask for Patreon. I'm not asking you guys to give me little tips or whatever people do on these streams. I'd feel a little funny about that as a 52-year-old man. But I'm perfectly happy to take your money in exchange for something of value. And the tropical fruit we sell is of value. We've got tons of avocados still before the end of the season comes. Next year, not this year, but next year, I'll be producing sapodilla at commercial quantities. I'll probably never be able to sell you star fruit because these things have a crappy shelf life. But if you ever come by the farm, these are fruiting almost year round, and it's a favorite for our visitors. Maybe you don't like tropical fruit, but you were here for some business advice. Maybe you like this hat. Maybe you like this shirt. Maybe you don't like any of this stuff, but you just like to support people. Again, you could help me out by making a purchase at guacfarm.com. www.guacfarm.com. I don't see any other new questions. And so I'm going to end the stream right here. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in a couple weeks.